Hey, what's up, guys? It's Flackfire. Today, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. Joining me for this video is Prodigio Pete, who is another YouTuber, one of the nicest guys that I've met in my time here on YouTube. Does a lot of videos related to Battlefield 1, Rainbow Six. If those interest you, be sure to check him out. I'll put a link to his channel in the video description here, but genuinely nice guy, fun guy to be around. And today, we're going to be talking about downloadable content in Battlefield 1. And with that said, I'm going to hand it off to Pete.
I'm doing very well, mate. Thanks ever so much for coming on today. And what I really wanted to talk to you about was downloadable content in Battlefield 1 and just get some of your opinions on it, being as you are such a wealth of knowledge about Battlefield 1. So the first thing is, we haven't had premium announced for Battlefield 1 yet. So do you think that we're going to go down the route of having a premium model in Battlefield 1, or is there some kind of alternative to that you can think there might be?
I think the fact that EA and DICE have yet to announce premium for Battlefield 1 is definitely odd that they haven't done that. You know, from what I can remember with, Battlefield Hardline, Battlefield 4, Battlefield 3, premium has always been there. And it was pretty much announced from the start. I mean, when you went to go pre-order the game, I believe you had the option to pre-order the special edition that came with premium. And the fact that, we can pre-order Battlefield 1 right now without premium definitely strikes me as odd, and it raises a lot of questions about what direction EA and DICE are going to go for downloadable content when it comes to Battlefield 1. And that said, I think there are really three ways that they can approach downloadable content. Of course, the first one is the premium route, having that more traditional way of doing things, which of course includes the macro transaction, so maps and modes kind of content, and then microtransactions, so things like the shortcut packs, the battle packs, that kind of thing is kind of what I would expect out of that traditional mode. There is, of course, also the announcement from Titanfall 2 that Titanfall 2 is not going to charge players for maps and modes DLC. So they're making a very concerted effort to keep the community together, and it looks like they're planning to make most of their money off of microtransactions, probably having to do with personalization, that kind of thing. Certainly Battlefield 1 could go that route, and then of course there is the third yet unknown option, which is none of the above. What other routes can Battlefield go in order to
and I think you raised
to
some
make their money?
Points there. In previous games, you would have heard about premium by now, I'm sure of it. Part of the pre-order of the game, I think they would have been marketing the premium aspect, so it does raise a few questions as to whether or not it will be in Battlefield 1 at all, particularly when you consider that much of the Battlefield community have been saying for a while now that they don't want it to be split by these DLC packs, which we have seen in the previous games do mean that a few months later that you can't actually play some of your favourite maps, and in fact in Hardline a couple of days later after the DLC you possibly wouldn't be able to go back and play it. So this could be a step forward, but the replacement could also be as scary as the idea of premium in as far as splitting the game off into microtransactions. Now, if it is a cosmetic type thing to fund future map packs, then I don't think I would mind that too much. We do know that microtransactions were in the previous Battlefield games like Battlefield 4 and Hardline, and they weren't too intrusive. I don't think anyone out there minds other people perhaps getting a 25 or 50% XP boost, because most of us have so many to burn as it is. But if it was things that perhaps were more integral to the game, we might have a few more voices raising concerns about that. So it would be interesting to see where it goes. If it's a cosmetic microtransaction that makes there be no season pass or premium, I could probably go with something like that. And from your knowledge as someone that knows a lot about World War One, do you think that that's something that could work, cosmetic customization as sort of microtransactions in a game like Battlefield 1?
I definitely think so. I also really want to point out, if I was in EA and DICE's position, I would be paying attention a lot to how players are playing their game. I don't think premium is working as well as they'd like it to. It's kind of devaluing itself when you're getting these new maps and can't play them because you're not having any servers that are available. So that's just another reason that I really hope that they're moving away from that model. But on personalization, if you want to talk like historical accuracy, there are lots of different things that could be done with Battlefield 1 that I wouldn't really view as intrusive and certainly not pay to play. Some of the people behind Battlefield 1 have really talked up some of the personalization options, in particular things like weapon skins and camouflage. Now, I'm not talking, the really ridiculous, over-the-top kinds of camouflage that we've seen in other games like Call of Duty, where, it moves around on your gun, like the dark matter camouflage or whatever that was. But there was a real effort historically by soldiers to kind of personalize the items that were issued to them, and we kind of see DICE has done some research in that aspect. If you look at the pre-order bonuses, in particular for the Harlem Hellfighters, you can see on the weapon skin that it's got little engravings on it and it's got carvings into the wood, and I'm sure that's the kind of stuff that we'll see for the other pre-order bonuses for T.E. Lawrence and the Red Baron. There's lots of different stuff there that could be done by DICE to, give the player a more personalized experience in Battlefield 1. And, historically, again, soldiers really tried to make their own things their own. There's lots of great examples of soldiers painting their helmets in some really early camouflage patterns, both on the British side, the American side, the German side, really between all the Entente and Central Powers sides there was a lot of that kind of personalization going on. Another fun thing, if you get bored and want to look up sometime, is trench art.
Right.
There's some real interesting trench art examples from World War I. We still don't know everything that's going to be personalizable. I'm expecting dog tags to come back. There are probably unit patches, and it would be real neat to have some historically accurate unit patches, for example. To be able to wear perhaps, the patch that your great-grandfather wore or something along those lines. Like, that would be a really cool moment in Battlefield 1 for sure.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different things that DICE and EA would be able to do with microtransactions that I wouldn't be particularly upset about. I would look at it and go, yeah, that's a personalization option. Yeah, I don't have to pay for that. So,
and it's really interesting getting your point of view on it, because you're someone that does know your stuff, let's face it. And if it is historically accurate that soldiers in the trenches and in the other theatres of war were able to customise some of their gear, and that they could bring that in as a way of perhaps funding free DLC packs, then I think that would be something I would support, depending on the sort of pricing mechanism and where it was. If it was not too overpriced and you didn't feel as though you had to have the gear to do well in the game, and it was just cosmetic, it was something I could probably get behind. And I suppose if EA felt it was something that was something affordable for them, that it would recoup the same amount of money that it did previously from the premium or season pass offering.
On the same note there, you're talking about funding maps with microtransaction downloadable content, and I mentioned it earlier, but if people aren't playing your game, they're not buying microtransactions. They're not going to be making those kinds of purchases. So if you continue to provide new experiences for them to play on in terms of maps and modes, I think they're going to be more likely to purchase things like microtransactions. From a production standpoint, it costs a lot less to make a lot of microtransaction personalization type options than it does to do things like maps. So it as well as I do that microtransactions make a lot of money. Grand Theft Auto 5 brought in $500 million in microtransactions alone.
Yeah, it's a big money earner for these games, the digital content offering. And as I've spoken to you about before, the digital content overall for EA brings in about 1.2 billion, and I think I might be quoting this incorrectly, but I think for the sports games like FIFA and Madden, the microtransactions bring in around $650 million, although I might be misquoting that. But if you think about that, $650 million in microtransactions is just crazy. Because you think of these video game producers as, you think that the income is from selling games, but
it absolutely is. I mean, that is a lot of money. And again, for most microtransactions, it's not required, right? It's not pay to play. And for that reason, I don't really have any problem with it.
It'd be interesting to see what our subscribers think about this. So do let us know in the comments section down below if you would welcome a premium type module, or if microtransactions as a way of making up that additional revenue. Because obviously your heart always says, look, I've paid for the game, I want all the content that's available, but your brain almost says that they won't make that content without an additional revenue stream. So they need that revenue stream to carry on supporting the game and make additional content in the future, but it's how they go about getting that money from the gamer. So it'd be interesting to hear what people think in the comments. Premium, is that something you prefer, or some kind of cosmetic microtransaction system? I think that they're the two main options here, really.
And there's, kind of another one that we haven't talked about yet, and it's kind of floating around, but the idea of faction DLC. There's a lot of discussion right now about the French being downloadable content, and if that's morally right or wrong or whatever. I've mentioned it in a different video, but I almost kind of like that in a way, because it means that we may see some of the other nations that were involved in World War I, like Romania, Serbia, the Russian Empire, the other big one there that we haven't heard anything about from EA or DICE. That would be a really neat addition to Battlefield 1 with the multiplayer, if they decide to go that route. But whether or not that would be a good business practice, I don't know.
Ideally, it would be good to see those factions come in for free. That would be nice, and maybe have some kind of map pack based on that theatre of war. Maybe an Eastern Front one with Russia or something like that. Do you think something like that would be feasible?
I think it's totally feasible. I would even like to see, an expansion to the single player, like an episodic type of thing. Maybe just a couple episodes that have to do with the Russian front that they had to deal with during World War I. I think that'd be a really neat glimpse into the life of somebody from a cultural perspective. But feasibility of it, I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. Again, we've discussed before about how other games have gone episodic. Hitman series has gone episodic with their game, and it does seem to be working on the whole. That'd be interesting to see if they went with a DLC type thing for the single player, because it's an opportunity perhaps to tell different stories and move the game forward. It's just whether people would want to play that, or if the Battlefield single player is more something that people play once, and then the longevity comes more out of the multiplayer, and whether people will be willing to buy more single player missions. But it is something I would buy and I would be interested in playing, but I don't know if the community on the whole would enjoy something like that. But I think it sounds cool.
Yeah, and I do as well. It's just historically, Battlefield has always been really, really heavily focused on multiplayer.
Well, this is all interesting stuff, and of course we will wait to see what they do have in store for us. But I want to thank you ever so much for coming on my channel. I wish you all the best with your channel, and I say to my subscribers, you won't regret checking out Flackfire's channel. It's amazing. As I say, he has just spot on knowledge of World War I, and there's a lot to learn over there. So please do check out his channel. Thank you ever so much for joining me, Mr. Flackfire.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And until next time, adios, amigos.